2022, we saw an absolute roller coaster ride for PC parts prices, and in fact, during the latter half of the year, we saw prices come down to much more affordable levels, both in the new and used market. However, what is going to happen in 2023? Well, today we're going to answer that question by first looking at the macroeconomic picture, and then we're going to take this data and apply it to all three companies, AMD, Intel, and Nvidia. And there's actually going to be some surprising predictions that you may not suspect.
If you want to get yourself a cheap, legit Windows 10 Pro key license, then today's video sponsor SCD Keys has you covered. For as little as $15, when you use that coupon code BFTYC, you can get Windows activated right now. Links in the description below.
Welcome back to Tech Yes City, and let's take a look at the United States Central Bank. This is the Federal Reserve, and their policies in 2022, which was starting to undertake a thing known as quantitative tightening. However, the tightening hasn't been that fast or that aggressive just yet. And I do believe that they are going to be forced, that is the Federal Reserve, they are going to be forced into a very hard predicament later on this year, sometime in perhaps April in 2023. And the reason for this is that interest rates have moved up in the baseline cash rate has moved up to around 4.5%, and they are paying out banks and mass institutions that have deposited money via a thing called the reverse repo function. And so taking a look at the Federal Reserve's balance sheet and also the current interest rates show that the interest rates are at 4.5%. However, they have a facility known as the reverse repo facility, as well as they hold cash deposits from institutions, large institutions, as well as commercial banks. And this interest rate currently is very dangerous to the Federal Reserve themselves, where they're in a position where they are now losing money. It's actually an unprecedented situation that they've never found themselves in before, where some people are predicting that in April this year, they will essentially be bankrupt. And so they'll have to change something drastically before or up until this point in time. And so what this means is we could either see two scenarios unfolding here, and that is massive amounts of quantitative tightening, in that they start really aggressively selling down their assets on their balance sheet, taking that money that would be otherwise deposited through what is known as a reverse repo facility or cash deposits, and then eliminating that money via quantitative tightening. However, there's also the other scenario, and this is that they start reducing interest rates again and start up more quantitative easing, aka printing more money and then buying up even more of these assets. And with inflation at the current rates that it's at in America, over 7%, I see that the former situation of them massively tightening is actually the more responsible thing to do, because essentially if they do quantitative easing and do exactly what they started doing in 2020 and 2021, this will lead to massive amounts of inflation, the likes which most of us have never seen in our lives. So they've got two choices here, and that is a financial market that is going to be extremely tight for money, or we're going to see a financial market where prices just go parabolic. And if you thought 2021 and 2022 was bad for price increases, then what's to come if they decide to start lowering interest rates and ease up monetary conditions again will be much worse. However, if we look at unemployment levels and also focus on inflation levels, I believe these numbers are actually being underreported. Even taking, for example, the unemployment since, say, 2007, where the unemployment rate itself was at 4.5%, we see that the population has grown 13% roughly since then. However, the employment levels as a whole has only really grown 8%, yet somehow the unemployment levels have gone down from 4.5% to 3.7%. So the way unemployment is being reported does seem bogus, and if the unemployment numbers are essentially quote unquote strong, and that could be used as further justification for the Federal Reserve to take in the first part that we explained, and that is even more aggressive quantitative tightening on their balance sheet. However, moving into the second part here, and that is the inflation numbers, if we look at the 1970s and the 1980s, or at least the early 1980s, we saw inflation numbers that were extremely high. And if we use those standards that they used back in the 70s and 80s and apply that to today's standards, inflation is well over 15%. So there is a massive problem in not just the US economy, but the global economy right now, one which I feel is coming ever closer to a massive pop. Though as always, if we go back to the cheat sheet here, the one that I tell you guys to always save in your browser, we can see that this has come down from its peak, and I do believe it will fall a lot faster, a lot sooner. And so do keep an eye on this. I do implore you guys, each and every one of you, to save this. And if you see this essentially running up again, you may wish to buy your tech as soon as possible. If you see this going down, you may wish to even think about drawing some cash out of the bank and holding that, because deals will essentially get a lot better. Now, if this stays flat, again, we're going to reach a period in April where I feel like this will essentially break, and that will be a forced move by the Federal Reserve, which will go in essentially either direction of up or down. So one thing, as always, when I talk about financials, it's important to know the information out there and be able to react accordingly. And especially as an individual, you can react very fast. And do not fear though, I will be reporting on this more as the year goes on and getting videos out as soon as I can. However, with that data aside, it's now time to look at how this applies to companies like Intel, Nvidia, and AMD, where this 4.5% interest rate, we're going to go back to this because it's so important for businesses, where a lot of people don't talk about the implications these high interest rates have on businesses, where they get a lot of their cash funding from essentially loans. And if we look at, say, for instance, Intel in particular versus at least Nvidia and AMD, they are more highly leveraged in terms of the debt that they've utilized to keep their companies running. Now, essentially, when these interest rates go up, that also means the debt repayments go up accordingly. And these debt repayments can force companies to then sell products faster and harder than they've ever done before, meaning that their margins will have to come down. And so what this means for these companies is essentially lower margins, and this then translates to the end consumer of better deals or better value for money when you're buying products. Now, if we look closely, and we can see the trends that emerged in 2022, and that was essentially the lower end products really weren't focused on at all. It was these higher end products, say for instance 7950Xs, as well as 13900Ks, as well as, if we look at the GPU side of things, there were 6800 XTs, RTX 3090s. These were products that came a lot more in focus than they've ever done in the past. And I believe this is where these companies derive their higher margins from, but also in turn, they want to push people towards these price brackets instead of buying the lower margin products, because there simply isn't enough revenue to acclaim in those spots as they would if they were selling these higher end products. So essentially, breaking this down for you guys, I expect if the first scenario unfolds, that is, things get a bit tighter and these companies get faced under more pressure to repay their debt, I believe you'll see, for instance, 13900Ks come down actually quite a bit in price, because companies like Intel will have to move a lot more volume. So what this means is higher end products will come down in price, believe it or not, just due to the forced nature of these companies then having to move products. So what you'll see is actually price reductions across the field, which can only mean a better deal for the end consumer. However, when it comes to low-end products, I just believe you'll see less of a focus on these products in terms of not just reviewers getting seeded these products, but also in terms of the focus and the volume that they're produced at versus the higher-end products where they're trying to push people towards. But looking further more into this, if we look at new GPUs, which I think a lot of people have a big focus on, with say an RX 7900 XTX, as well as an RTX 4080, and even the newly released RTX 4070 Ti, these products, the longer they sit on the shelves, the sooner the prices will come down. So it's pretty much a game of cat and mouse at the moment. However, this time around, if you are the cat, and that's the end consumer, the end consumer has been used to being the mouse, but this time around the roles will be reversed, and you will know that these prices have to come down in this current economy and these current conditions. So hopefully this video has acted like a bit of a cheat sheet in terms of what you can expect forward going with prices in 2023. Take for instance, if you've got a 7900 XTX at $1,100, well, you could see that come down to say $900 or maybe even $800 brand new. And don't be surprised if it does, because AMD will have to, and they'll be forced to, move these products and get revenue flowing and get cash flow to pay back their repayments on the interest on their debt. And if we look at Nvidia with their RTX 4080s and even 4090s, if these come out of fashion a little bit and people aren't buying them up at their current prices, these will be forced to come down in price also. Then if we look at Intel CPUs, just putting out some examples here, 13900K, currently $600, you could see that go down to say even $400 on the new market. Now, if we look at those prices and then relate that, and I know a lot of you guys have questions of, well, how does this apply to the used market? Well, the used market is always reactionary to the new market. So if new prices are coming down, then that only means that used prices will come down even further. So if you are into used bargain hunting, then this means that you will get a much better deal in 2023. Now, applying this back to the broad economy in general, don't ever take anything for granted. And as we said, go look at this video, go watch it back and look at the information within it, because at the moment, things are up in the air. Things could go either way. We could see a massive amount more of inflation if the Federal Reserve decides to reverse course, or we could see a massive reduction in actual free cash flow available in the economy. And this essentially means tighter conditions. And this will mean much better deals in terms of their current dollar value. Though ultimately coming out of 2022 and going into 2023, it's certainly been a big pinch for people with their discretionary income not really going up so much, at least not even tracking the levels of the official inflation numbers. However, the prices that people have to pay for groceries and things like that have certainly skyrocketed, leaving a lot of people left with less discretionary income to spend on things like tech as well. So in terms of tech prices and just PC parts in particular, they are at the current trajectory going to come down, believe it or not, even more than we're used to. So depending on which position you are in, you could be benefiting out of this, or you could be losing out, especially if you paid a lot higher prices for things in the past and then you don't have a lot of discretionary income available. However, one thing for sure is a lot of people are feeling the pinch. Even animals out in my backyard, take for instance the kangaroos, they're feeling the pinch to the point where they're just starting to fight each other. So don't let things get to that level. Don't start fighting each other. Just be diligent about the future. Know what the real story is. And at Tech Yes City here, I'm always going to try and tell you guys what the real story is. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button. Also, let us know in the comment section below what you think about the predictions made in today's video. Love reading those thoughts and opinions. As always, just like this question of the day here, which comes from Pan Talker, and they ask, are brand new RX 6600s for 299 Aussie dollars plus $50 delivery on bid good? And if it's brand new at essentially 350 Aussie dollars for an RX 6600, considering the current exchange rate versus the USD, that's actually a very good deal. You're essentially not going to lose a whole lot of money buying an RX 6600. In fact, that's one of the graphics cards that hasn't seen a whole big price drop because it's already extremely good value for money. It's in fact one of my favorite cards here at the moment, both on the new and used market, and it's just offering extremely good value for money. So hopefully that answers that question. And with that aside, I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. If you've stayed this far and you're enjoying that Tech Yes content, as always, be sure to hit that sub button, ring the bell to get the videos as soon as they drop, and I'll see you next time. Peace out for now. Bye.